Recently, I was talking to a friend and they asked me what my biggest regret was in college. And as someone who's moving from that college age to my mid 20s now, I was reflecting on what were the biggest challenges in my adolescent and young adulthood. Challenges that I still experience every day, and takeaways that I've learned from 2.5 decades of being alive. I realized that I don't really believe in regretting things because regret isn't necessarily a helpful emotion. To me, regret means wishing you had done something different. But because we can't change the past, the only thing we can do is learn from what we could have done better. And I've been reflecting on this transition as I move from a mindset where I feel like a teenager, a child, to an adult. It's hard to define what an adult means when there aren't necessarily concrete examples. We only have references like owning a house, having more responsibilities, taking care of yourself, living alone. But none of those factors really mean that you're an adult. Just because you have all of those things doesn't necessarily create an adult. So for me, I recognize that being an adult means owning my truth and using that truth as a way to make choices that empower me. Along with that, there are layers of self-acceptance, self-approval, compassion, discipline, time management, and ultimately considering my feelings enough so that I put myself in the most ideal situation as frequently as possible. My favorite example of this is having a morning routine. I started having a morning routine when I was about 21, 22, when I first started doing yoga. And that consistency, that structure, really created a sacred space for my energy to come into every morning. This container of space allows my body to settle into the waking world, and slowly I added on journaling, meditation, and pattern reprogramming in my thoughts so that I could navigate life outside in a way that was filled with confidence and a true sense of self-authority, of personal authority. When you're an adult, I believe that you are less swayed and influenced by other people's reactions, behaviors, and thoughts, and you're more easily influenced by those that actually inspire you, and you choose to consume information that helps you long term. So much of being an adult is thinking about things in its longevity. How can it create a sustainable foundation for us in the long term? And what sacrifices are we willing to make in the short term in order to create a life that is fulfilling, that is playful and full of pleasure and balance and acceptance? This transition isn't always easy, especially for me as someone who went through a lot of traumatizing experiences and internalized a lot of thoughts that weren't mine. I, from a young age, like all of us, thought that listening to my parents was the best thing to do. And in many cases, it is. There are a lot we can learn from our caregivers. At the same time, there can be a level of disconnect from how you really feel when your true voice isn't supported by your caregivers. So One of my biggest takeaways is to have the courage to believe in myself fervently and relentlessly. This means listening to my gut even if it doesn't make sense, making choices even if it's not practical. Now, this doesn't mean like spending money lavishly or going out clubbing just to avoid feeling my emotions, but it's the complete opposite. Taking time for myself, checking in, and being really aware and present of how I'm feeling instead of catering to what I think other people want instead of pleasing others first. This creates an atmosphere of personal authority that allows me to fill up a room with my energy and to observe and move through life on my own rhythm instead of conforming to other people's. I am now at a point where I'm completely okay with moving at my own pace, of being a late bloomer and not necessarily being on the same timeline as everyone else. I also learned that comparing myself to other people will only create misery, because the more that I look at what others have, what others don't have compared to me, the more I'm focusing my attention on the judgment and the differences between me and others, when in fact there are so many things in common that I have with other people. We are all humans, we all share so many similar needs, we all live similar lifestyles in this type of society, and to compare myself to others is ultimately a meaningless pursuit, because the only comparison that really matters is my current self to my past selves, and of course my future self. Now, this is all easier said than done, but I think when I'm moving through life, and especially in the really, really hard moments of interacting with others and there's a conflict, of making really tough choices, of moving out, of standing up for myself because I do value myself, those are the hardest moments that test your ability to approve and love yourself. And with this knowledge, I'm able to make mistakes and learn from them. And I've read books that talk about self-development, videos that talk about the spiritual alchemy of your thought patterns, and learning about hypnosis as a way to counteract the habitual thoughts I have that have in the past just made me feel more shame and more hurt. Becoming a real adult, not that there's a difference between a real and a fake adult, but becoming a real adult to me is owning your truth, owning your power, being weird, being playful, because nobody really cares. And the sooner you realize that, the faster you can just do more of what you want, instead of letting your judgments of yourself get in the way and letting your what ifs prevent you from taking action. I, in the past, and still sometimes, have been an overthinker. I complicate things in my brain, and I like to go to the worst case scenario as well as the best case scenario, but there are too many thoughts to organize, and that can prevent me from taking action, because all I'm doing is just stewing in my solitude or doing the same thing every single day with no real diversity in my time. And I realized that life doesn't just happen for me, life happens because of me, and this means being intentional and conscious and keeping my life simple. not creating unrealistic expectations that shame me, but letting those expectations create more imagination so that I can move forward with the feeling of innocence and hope rather than despair and lack. And this is still something that I'm learning every day, but the easiest way to keep things simple is by journaling things. I've been keeping my to-do list, and checking them off every day has been incredibly gratifying. I also recently started writing a list of wins that I have every day, whether that's a small win or a big win, from getting a free coffee from someone, a free pastry, to being able to see my friends when I'm visiting my old city that I used to live in, to the sun hitting my skin. These are all wins to me that make my life feel luxurious and good. And the solution to navigating that transition from childhood to adulthood isn't really about the cognitive dissonance of moving to a new phase of life, but it's more about wanting to control the unknowns and not knowing whether you're capable enough to handle what you don't know yet. And what I've learned is that as long as I know myself, my own skills, my own resourcefulness, and my ability to navigate conflict, to communicate my thoughts, to tell stories that create real impact, these intangible skills are what helps me navigate that transition. So I want you to ask yourself, what are some assets that you already have in your internal world that have helped you this far to move through so many different changes of life, from a toddler to a child to a prepubescent to an adolescent to a teenager, and so on. There are common themes that you'll find in your life. There are patterns that you can seek out, because all of us are worlds of different webs of patterns that interweb with each other, and each of us carry a specific frequency that we embody to move through this life. And I encourage you to stay true to your frequency and not let these external accolades or expectations prevent you from going off your path. These things take time and practice, but the more aware and present you're able to be with your thoughts, with your emotions, and understand that your habitual thoughts do create the emotional cycles that you experience, the easier it becomes to go through that transition and to face your fears. Write down what you're afraid of. See if those fears are really real or not, or if they're just manifestations of your own feelings of lack. And there's a lot to be said for people who've done that internal work, because you see a difference and you can feel it when you interact with them, because they're present and they're there and they care about their relationship with you. And I've learned that being an adult isn't really about needing to achieve all of these huge accomplishments or travel to places or making a lot of money. It just boils down to the day-to-day. Are you living life with a sense of innocence and hope and openness? Are you taking care of your body? Are you making the right choices when it comes down to the kind of food you consume? Because our diet influences 90% of our emotions. What is the kind of lifestyle that you want, and how can you incorporate that ideal lifestyle into how you're living your life now. Know that nothing will ever be flawless, for perfection is an impossible standard meant to discourage us. And instead, see this internal expectation that you have inside you to be perfect. See this perfectionism as a channel for you to imagine a better world and to propel you and support you into making more empowering choices in your daily life. So that was a lot, but I hope that answered some questions for anyone navigating their 20s and adulthood. And I provide one-on-one hypnosis readings, hypnosis sessions for those of you who would like coaching or just want some advice on how to navigate your adulthood. I have a lot of hypnosis techniques I use for combating social anxiety, for changing addictive habits, to even managing pain and migraines. I love yapping. I love yapping. I think it's such a great form of communication because I'm just letting my consciousness flow, and I like doing these unplanned talks because I can just share my experiences and hopefully reach even just one person. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you very, very soon. Bye!